Flash?
We'll do the best we can.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
And welcome.
You bet. Everybody.
Good morning.
Everybody have a nice restful evening.
Yes.
It's nice to see your faces. I'm really stalling on the presentation of the technology. It really works. I just wanted to hear you sing some more. Very nicely done. Thank you so much for doing that. It was beautiful. It was good singing. Very good. And very gracious this morning as well. Again, my name is Stephen Keizer. I'm the Vice President for Ministry Relations at the Presbyterian Foundation. The Foundation is very honored to be here and pleased to talk with you about how we as Presbyterians can be more gracious and grateful to God for all that He has given to us. About 5 years ago, the Foundation started working on a new approach to stewardship and planned giving, realizing that in order for our congregations to be financially stable and to sustain themselves, they really needed to be generous themselves. They needed to be grateful with all that God had blessed them with. And we, as a resource, needed to come up with ways to help them figure out how to equip their members with the skills and the tools and the desire to give more money to the missions of those individual congregations. What we started working on was something called a culture of generosity, a way to not only change some of the practices that we do as Presbyterians around stewardship, but to really change the thought of generosity within each individual within our pews and our membership, knowing that the more generous they become, the more there will be to advance the kingdom, and the more there will be for us to do our mission work, and the whole will be lifted by focusing on the generosity of one individual. Okay? So today what I'd like to do is take some time and talk about what that means, what a culture of generosity looks like in the church in 2017. And then also share some of the services and the resources available through the Presbyterian Foundation that can help you accomplish that. Okay? Now this will only work if you all feel compelled to ask questions. I have been given about an hour and 15 minutes. I don't want to talk that long, but I will as long as you have questions. So as I'm talking, if you want me to explain something further or you'd like me to talk about something different, do what James is doing and raise your hand, and we'll go from there.
Start by explaining what planned giving, these two words, mean.
Sure. So the Presbyterian Foundation was established back in 1799, primarily as the planned giving branch of the denomination. Planned giving is those things that you have to make a plan in order to give. In our annual stewardship programs, we simply make a decision whether or not we're going to put money in the offering plates, whether we're going to write a check to the church, whether we're going to give out of the income that we've generated on an annual basis. Planned giving's a little more outside of that. Planned giving really talks about all of the assets that we've accumulated over our lifetime, the things that we have been given through God's grace and glory that we don't use on a daily basis, but we use maybe at the end of our life or maybe in retirement to generate income for ourselves or to eventually leave to a cause. A lot of times that goes to our children, our family, but it also is an opportunity to include the church as part of that. So how many of us have ever heard of a will? A will? Yes? Okay, most of you have. That's great. A will is a document that we use traditionally to make a planned gift. A will is a document that tells the state, whether it's Michigan where I'm from, Washington where we are today, whether it's the federal government, what to do with all of our assets that we've accumulated, whether it's our house, whether it's real estate, whether it's collectibles, whether it's savings, whether it's investments. How are we going to distribute that when we no longer need it or at our death? And that's really what planned giving is. We're going to talk specifically about some of those vehicles, a will, trust, those types of things later on. What I'd like to do right now is just kind of talk a 30,000-foot view, way high level, of what generosity means, what it looks like, and what the landscape of giving looks like in 2017. So the first slide that I'm going to share is this cute little comic that I found regarding baptism. We all know that baptism is the time where we become a member of God's kingdom, whether it's in youth or in adulthood, and it's usually symbolized by some type of water function, right? You either get fully immersed or we sprinkle a little water on our foreheads. In this particular case, the pastor on the right is going to baptize Charles, and he's going to submerge him, and he puts him under and says that everything that goes under the water belongs to God, and Charles holds up his money, right? He doesn't want his money to go to God, right? And that kind of, it's funny, but it is kind of poignant, it is kind of relevant to the kind of culture that we experience in our churches, at least in the churches I deal with in Michigan and Ohio, and I know that Rob deals with out here in the West Coast. That's a common thought among parishioners. We're all in emotionally, we're all in physically, but sometimes we're not all in when it comes to our finances. Creating a culture of generosity, and what the foundation has been trying to teach to our congregations, is that can't happen. That has to be all in one. Our finances need to be explored just like our spirituality, our soul, our physical attributes, our life on earth has to be reflected in how we decide with our finances, okay? Most of the time we refer to the Corinthians statement that says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Are you all familiar with that? So there is plenty of scripture, plenty of references by Jesus when he walked on earth of where our finances and our lifestyle are intertwined, and they need to reflect each other. So if we're going to be spiritual on one side, we also need to be spiritual on the other side. And that's what creating this culture of generosity is about. It's how do we talk to our members? How do we create that opportunity for them to be as generous with their finances as they are with their time, their talent, and other things that they're doing for the church? Okay? Generosity is measured in lots of ways, but the easiest way is really to look at money that is given to charitable activities. And this figure shows that we are fairly generous as a society. Americans have given $373.25 billion to charity in 2015. I don't have the 2016 stats yet, so I'm using 2015. But 2016 is going to be about the same, a little bit of an increase, as 2015 was from 2014. You can see that this represents about a 4% increase from 2014. This indicates to me that there are a lot of good things occurring in our country and abroad where people are generous, they are giving. They are supporting those functions that are close to them. Again, where their treasure is, there their heart will be as well. So things they're involved in, they are supporting with these charitable dollars. The good news for the church is that in 2015, religious organizations received 33% of that figure. All right? The religious organizations, including the PCUSA congregations like yours, are part of that 33%. They've received more than the educational institutions, our health and human services institutions like hospitals, and other grant-making foundations that most of you are probably familiar with or at least read about in the paper or heard about in your daily life. The bad news is religion used to get 51% of that portion. So in 1990 through 94, 51% of the figure of charitable giving went to religious organizations. Again, today, that's down to 33%. So what we are facing is a more competitive environment for our giving dollars. People have more ways to give, more things to give to. The church needs to understand that and embrace that, understand that, and realize that if we're going to ask our members to give, whether it's through the annual stewardship program, whether it's through some type of planned gift, there are about 1.5 million other charitable organizations in the U.S. that are asking for that dollar. All right? Only about a third of that, or a fifth of that, are congregations. So the church is becoming less and less a part of the giving fabric within the country. And we feel that we need to help you understand that and to have the resources in order to overcome that and hopefully move that trend backwards where we're growing from 33 back up towards that 51 instead of going down. We believe in what you do. You believe in what you do. We need to make sure that our members understand that the giving is still done through the church and through the good causes that we all do within our congregations. Does that make sense? Does everybody understand that? Does anybody experience that in their congregations? Do you all feel that? Or is this not a real relevant direction for you all?
A lot of people say to me, I give to other charitable organizations, including the church. A lot of millennials.
Yes. So the statistics we have in this regard is that the average Presbyterian gives to 7 different causes on an annual basis, one of which is the church. That used to be different back when it was 55%, where the church was the primary. They probably maybe gave to 1 or 2 others. But again, there are so many options, so many ways to do that, and we're going to talk about some of those ways. But that's the landscape. That's what we're up against. That's what we need to realize if we're going to continue to be relevant in the world of generosity and funding mission and carrying out God's will through the kingdom. That's what we're up against. Okay? The other thing I wanted to share were some trends that we are seeing in philanthropy, in giving across the country that kind of support that $353 billion figure that I shared with you earlier. There are a lot of trends, but these are I'm going to share the 6 trends that we have found to be the most significant, the most important, the things that we can deal with to change our culture within our congregations to a more generous, grateful congregation to do God's work. The first one is donor-driven. Donor-driven in this respect that in the 1950s, the style of giving was give to the church because the church needs the money in order to do things. Nowadays, individual donors want to know what's the benefit for me, what's the impact I can have on lives. It needs to be more about the individual giving than it does about the receiver, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Secondly, relationship focused. We know that people like to give to people. People like to be impacted or impact the lives of other people. The relationships are important. Talking about giving in your congregation for others is important. Being an example for others about your giving is important. Having those relationships are really what can help change that culture within our congregations to be more effective, to be more generous, and ultimately do more mission work, which hopefully is our goal within every congregation. Thirdly is that our choice abundant. There are literally millions of choices. Again, getting back to that competitive factor. We need to understand that. We need to separate, differentiate ourselves from our competitors. We need to make the church relevant, again, in the lives of the individuals and the way that they're giving, and we'll talk about that. Boundary bereft, that just means that gifts come from a variety of sources. James already talked about planned giving, which we'll talk about, but there's electronic giving, there's traditional giving, there's illiquid assets, there are trusts, there are all types and ways that people are giving. whether it's through our technological advances on our smartphones or whatever it is. We need to be up to speed on that. We need to provide those opportunities, or we're not going to be there when that decision is made by an individual donor to make that gift. Time transcendent as well. Ways to give are available 24/7, 365 days a year. It's no longer just in the fall when our normal stewardship campaigns are. When all do you do a normal stewardship campaign, if at all? No?
Yeah, we are. 咱有迄个预算的时阵有迄个 pledge， 请举手。
Fall, still do that? Fall.
One.
All right.
Most of the churches now.
Don't. Okay, great. And we can talk about that as well. Information rich. Donors want to see what's happening with the money. They want to experience what's going on. They want to understand that the institution is able to carry out their desires with the money. So being transparent, letting them understand what's going on, making them a part of that is extremely important in today's environment when it relates to giving. So let's talk in specific about these real quick. Let's talk about each one. And the first one was donor-driven. Donor-driven to us really means that, again, it's about the individual. It's about passion. It's about things we do. Congregations that Rob and I visit are very similar. We're all Presbyterian. We all follow certain orders of worship. We have certain sacraments that we do. But we all do little different things within our congregations that make us unique. We need to make sure that we are connecting our individual members with those activities. One of the standard things, and one of the things you all have done already this morning, is music. Presbyterian churches are famous for wonderful music and programs and people getting involved. A lot of times, donors have that affiliation to the music program. They want to support that music program. They want to see that the music program continues even when they're not capable of singing. That's what they're passionate about. Having those opportunities that are available for them to support, to designate, to feel that they're supporting what they have a passion for is extremely important in that. So having, yeah, James, go ahead.
You're talking about designated giving in this instance, right?
Sure.
And so one of the pet peeves I have is actually those designated giving accounts that is like 40, 50 years old.
Right.
And so that's, I mean, designated giving, 咱大家是想指定的这个指定的方向，就是讲有人讲我要音乐，所以我捐10万给音乐，完全拢会使加入音乐。咱内底咱预算，咱的 budget 内底有一个，就是讲袂使去 touch， 袂使去动，除了是，嘿，所以这就是伊家讲的 designated giving。我的问题就是讲，有足侪 designated giving 内底拢抑有一寡1块啊、2块啊，讲10几块迄种的啊，吼，很多杂的东西，我讲迄就无好的。So what can you do? How do you? Sure. The designated giving sometimes become a chore.
It can be. It can be. We have a situation that's fairly common in the foundation. The foundation receives money, holds it in perpetuity, generates income from it, and sends it back to the congregation. Individual donors usually establish those. They're called permanent endowment funds. And we have quite a few where some wonderful, generous individuals in the 50s, maybe 40s, even the 60s, like to see white flowers in the front of the church. We have a lot of white flower funds. One of them is $1 million, and it generates about $50,000 a year just to buy white flowers. To your point, that's a little excessive for white flowers to the most part. So I bring this up, and we talk about designated giving a lot because, as I said, donors want to do that. They want that. They have their passions. We need to know that. What we need to do is have contingencies involved that say, okay, if this generates more than $10,000, spend the first $10,000 on white flowers, spend the rest on something else. Even further, what we need to do is to show them that white flowers are important and they impact the worship service, but what's more important is what the worship service does, how it impacts someone's soul, someone's heart, and get them to see that we will have white flowers, but your whole gift should go to do worship, or again, music. And having those broad categories and understanding how I can show someone within those broad categories that their personal heart passion can be accomplished is what we're talking about when we're messaging for these things, right? So it's how do we message, how do we talk to them, how do we show them that their passion is being represented in the normal things we do as a congregation. And that's really the connection, the understanding that we have to know that our members are going to have certain things. They like to come to church for certain reasons. We need to show that if they support the church in general, those things will continue to live without putting those constraints on the church where they can't exist. That's an art, not a science, okay? There's no 1, 2, 3 easy step. A lot of it is communication, a lot of it's understanding, a lot of it's being willing to have those conversations. That's not something you can accomplish overnight or just by saying, we're not going to do that. That's by having conversations over and over and letting them understand and listening to them and making them feel like they're being heard. That's how you change the culture. You don't change it by overnight putting in rules and regulations. You change the culture and become more donor-driven by listening to them, trying to come together to understand. Those are the things we work with stewardship committees, finance committees. It's okay to do the numbers. It's okay to show that you have to exist. But we have to communicate it appropriately. We have to have those conversations. And we have to understand what the donor is trying to accomplish from that. The other piece of this is a slide that I skipped over real quick that I just wanted to share if I can get back to it. Where we go? There. The other part of the donor-driven is to also understand that each and every person in our pews probably comes from a different place, okay? They come from a different time. They come from a different period. They might come from a different part of the country. They might come from a different socioeconomic situation. They are different. And a lot of times where they come from determines how they think about giving, how they think about the church, what they're willing to do. This is something we use a lot to talk about when someone was born, so generational giving. It may not be exactly specific to your particular congregations and the people that attend, but in general what I wanted to show you was we do need to realize that if there are people born before 1945 and before, they have certain ideas, they have certain things that they believe based on how they were raised during that time, things that were going on. 1945 and before is a completely different world than 1980 to 2000, right? So we've probably all heard the term millennials. Is that a pretty common phrase for you all too? That's the younger generation. I have 3 of them in my house. Well, they're in college. One's gone, thank goodness. Sorry, don't tell them that. But they are different. They respond differently than I do, and I would be considered a boomer, right? So we need to understand that when I'm having a conversation with someone who was born before 1945, they are more loyal to the denomination. Talking about you give because it's duty. You give because that's what you're supposed to do. You talk about savings, those kinds of things. That rings to them. They understand that. If you said those words to a millennial, it wouldn't mean anything to them. I'm not going to be loyal to an institution. I don't care. I'm not saving right now. I don't worry about that stuff. They're going to be more concerned with people and individuals and how do I feel good about my giving. So understanding that generational slant, understanding where people come from, again, is how we get to that donor-driven aspect of giving. Whether it's annual or planned giving, our conversations have to be in those types of terms. I see a lot of head shaking, so this kind of makes a little bit of sense to you all. Yeah.
这应该是这个 giving 做有效的，这个 chart 啊，对咱的宣教爱注意看，对咱宣教就有效的。你爱看迄个少年的 loyal persons， 所以就是讲安怎迄个关系，一对一的关系是非常重要的。所以这个应该giving. I'm talking about this is not only great for giving, it's also good for evangelism.
Exactly. Very much so. And again, these things down here are really the drivers. So if you're going to go to a millennial, having another millennial say, hey, you should do this, is going to be more effective than just having the pastor or the church say, you need to do that. Right? But here, if the church asks, I'm going to do it. Here, if my friend asks, I'm going to do it. And we need to understand that and have that. A lot of churches I work with, in their stewardship, their annual giving, tend to send out one letter to the entire congregation saying, hey, it's that time of year, please make your pledge, right? Well, that letter is pretty tough to draft if you're trying to reach all 4 of those different groups of people. Maybe writing 4 letters would be better, right? Maybe having a millennial write the letter to the millennials, having a builder write it to the builders is important. So understanding that, having those relationships, getting that, that's how we change our culture. That's how we become more donor-driven. We're more concerned about them than we are. The church is going to benefit if we make them feel good about their giving, and if we understand them in these terms, they're going to feel good, they're going to give more, they're going to feel great about their giving, they're going to be more connected. And that's kind of the purpose and the reason for talking about that. Is that good? Any questions about that? You all have any experiences with the different generations that may be a little different than what we up here? I understand that, that's fine. This was just to kind of get you thinking about the differences and from that. Similar? Oh, that's good to know too. Okay, great. I learned something. Okay, good. Cool. The second one is relationship focused, and that kind of builds on what we just said as far as having, maybe a millennial talk to a millennial, builder talking to a builder, those types of things. This also really talks, I think, extremely relevant about the time, the talent, and the treasure. We have kind of a little example we use of a 3-legged stool. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but I used to have one in my house. My mom had a little footstool, and it had 3 legs on it, right? And it would hold up my feet. Well, if one of those legs was broken or wasn't working, it wouldn't hold up my feet. It would fall over. We like to think of our participation in our churches as a 3-legged stool that the church can sit on. And the 3 legs of that stool are time, talent, and treasure. And all 3 of those things need to be active and relevant in order for someone to be truly spiritual and truly engaged and be an effective member in our congregations. And being relationship focused really focuses on that, engaging people in the processes, inviting them to participate in things that they are comfortable with, whether it's singing in the choir, whether it's teaching Sunday school, whether it's doing a Bible study, whether it's cooking meals, whether it's doing whatever needs to be done, whatever they want, whatever their passion is, getting them involved in those activities. Again, where your treasure is, there your heart is. I also think that works the other way. Where your heart is, there your treasure will be as well. Which means if I'm actively involved, if I'm emotionally involved in the church, if I'm there all the time, if I'm doing things, if I'm helping others, I'm more likely to support that with my finances just as well as I'm supporting that with my time. So having a comprehensive understanding of that, incorporating time, talent, and treasure into your giving process really is effective, really makes it a more meaningful experience and moves it away from a transaction to a meaningful spiritual event. Okay? Does that make sense? Pretty, yes, thank you.
I have a question on the topic before this one.
Yes.
About the designated donations. I work with the church as a treasurer, department staff, and accounting. So if I have some money donated for a certain purpose, right? That money coming into the bank, that will be put in the same bank. When we invest that money, will be combine everything together, so the profit from that donation does not go designing into the same category as the original donors. So my question becomes that investment income from the donors fund, can they have to be stay into the same category?
Yes, it needs to stay into the same category.
But when they, some of that donation for the thing is so small, some are big, right? We don't all together and put into a big piece of fund.
Yeah.
That will generate more money than individually.
Certainly.
So what do we do?
Yeah, that's a very common occurrence. There are a lot of times where gifts are given and they're not large enough to really support something or do what they accomplished. Generally, the rule of thumb is to engage in conversations with the individuals that gave the money. So if you have the ability, the first thing I would encourage is to go back to the people who have given it and have that conversation and talk to them about it and ensure that they're okay with a change or they're willing to do that. Explain it to them again. Keeping them involved in the conversation, being willing to have that conversation, not just making the decision, letting them know the situation, what's occurring, how can you do that. And again, when you go back to them, make sure you don't just ignore their original purpose. Make sure you show them that, I know this was your original purpose. We're going to kind of do something over here. It's not exactly the same, but it's still accomplishing some of the things you wanted. And try to have that conversation again. Understanding them as a donor and what they want is the first thing you should do with them.
Because there are things that happening, most people engage with that thing, so the fund for this particular purpose is too much to spend, right? So
yeah, and that's the other side. So let's say we're generating, again to the white flowers, where we're generating more than we really need for a program. Going back and explaining, that to me is actually a really good problem to have, right? We have more money than we need to spend on something. How can we do something different? That opens up to have the conversations about the vision of the church. Where could we be? Some of that dreaming that needs to be done. And again, it's a great question, and it really can be a part of this because it is an opportunity to engage in conversations about what if. A lot of times, Rob and I will talk to stewardship committees, people that are charged with raising the annual dollars, as well as maybe the planned gifts as well. But we will ask them, if someone gave you $100,000 and they had no restriction on it, what would you do with it, right? If you're going to be donor-driven, relationship-oriented, you need to answer that question. Whether you actually think you'll get a gift of $100,000 is irrelevant. The fact that you have those conversations, the fact that you talk about what's the future of the church, where are we going, what's our direction, that's what people get excited about. That's how you can then go back and have a conversation and say, hey, when you gave that gift, this activity that you supported was important, and we've done this for a period of time, but now because of what we've done, we're going over here and we're doing bigger and better and greater things here. We want you to come along with that. Can we redirect these over here? That's a very positive conversation than just saying, hey, we don't have enough money or we don't do that program anymore. We've got to talk about it in terms of where we're going, vision, sustainability, all that dreaming stuff, that's what donors want. Think about your own individual situation. If you're going to make a decision to support something, what happens before you pull the trigger, before you make that decision? Something is moved inside of you, right? You feel compelled. You feel like that's a good thing to do. Well, we need to understand that about our donors, and we need to make them feel that way. So we need to make the case to excite them about this is what could happen. Not what's happened in the past, and we just need to keep the lights on and move forward and handle our deficits. No. They want to be impassioned. They want to feel like they're making a difference. They want to have that impact on. Does that help? Does that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I got another question, another comment that happened not long ago. Because our church tried to develop English ministry, and then we need fund for that one. To me, if whenever I donate to my church, I don't make a restriction. I always say use to the best way the church can use it. I think that's a better choice for the church, because they can use my money to any way that they feel the most needed. But so I did not design the money for the English ministry. And then finally, a few months later, we found the fund for the ministry in English is too little. So they thought that the congregation didn't want it and become very disappointed. So
It is disappointing
if I knew,
to find out.
I would
Right.
put my money is for that purpose. But
Right.
I think it's better for the church to decide which way you want to use it. But that was my mistake. I think.
It does, but again, in order to be successful, the church is the people in the pews. So if they're not going to support it, then that's what we have to, have those conversations of, is that the direction we should be going? So having those conversations, opening up, understanding, again, that's why having a discussion about where should we be, what do we want to look like as a faith community in 15 years, 30 years, 100 years, that helps shape that conversation a lot better than just saying, oh, we don't have enough money for something someone wanted. A lot of times I have conversations with churches about what we would call individual donor desires or pet projects or things. What we're suggesting is we need to have these types of conversations. We need to be global in our strategic thinking. We need to talk about it in small groups and one-on-one, so we are not just a church that says, okay, someone gave us $100,000 to do it, so we have to go in that direction. It should be a community of people moving in the right direction, understanding that I may have to, as an individual, understand my place within that larger piece. What happens too many times is we don't have those conversations, and it ends up being the church doesn't want to do what I do, I don't want to do what the church is, so I'm going to walk away. What I'm saying is, in the first two trends, if you have conversations, if you include them, if you think about it from their side, it helps have those conversations so you get away from that contention that my way or the church's way, and it doesn't come together, okay? I know that's not easy, and I know that's difficult.
Because we give a few months, maybe about 6 months,
Sure.
to say we try to do this, and we also want to have the entire congregation to support it, because that should not be supported by only a few people.
Correct.
Okay, so even though people can donate more, but it's not good for that.
Right. And getting buy-in is difficult,
It's
and
very
it
hard.
takes time. And again, this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. This is something that's going to happen over time. And really why we call it a culture of generosity, because we want to change the culture. And changing the culture within your congregation really makes a difference over time. But again, it's something that doesn't happen quickly. It takes a lot of time and consideration from these different aspects. Let's go through these a little quicker, because I do want to get to some of the tools and stuff before we do run out of time. This one, choice abundant, again, I think we talked about that. There's a lot of options out there. Making the church relevant in what your individual members are supporting outside the church makes a difference. I had a church, just as a quick example, in Michigan that I was working with, and they were struggling with some deficit. They weren't covering their expenses. They went through this strategic process. They started looking outside at the community and the difference they were making. And they started realizing that they were trying to do, let's say, 15 things, and they weren't doing them very well. They didn't have the money for all the things. They did a lot of small groups. They did a lot of conversations with individual members. And they came as a group of consensus as a church is, we need to narrow that from 12 to 5. And they started doing 5 things instead of 12. And then they took it one step further and said, those 5 things have to be connected to the community. Because if we're not here to help the community, what are we really doing here? So they started engaging with the community. They narrowed their thing down to 5. They started balancing their budget. And at an event they had 8 months later, a gentleman who doesn't come to their church but is pretty prominent in the community, came to them and gave them $100,000 for their preschool program because he saw what they were doing. He was bought in. He doesn't even go to church there. But as a community member, he understood the value that church was having, and he gave them a gift to support that particular activity because they focused what they were doing, they got better at it, and they started communicating and working with the community on those 5 things. The community felt more impact from them, and this gentleman felt moved to support that, and it's been a really good relationship ever since he's done that with them. So again, making yourself relevant, understanding what's going on in the community, realizing that your members are involved in a lot of things, and how can I partner with those things? Again, do I need to recreate something? No. If someone else is doing it, how can the church be involved with that? How can I support that? That way you're feeling like you're meeting your members' needs instead of it always being about the church from that standpoint. Boundary bereft, this one just talks again about giving opportunities come from all directions. We'll talk about annual and planned a little bit more, but creating and promoting legacy gifts as well as annual stewardship. And talking about stewardship and giving year-round. That's something we've really promoted is year-round stewardship. When I first took this position back in 2004, someone asked me a question and said, how many times do you think Jesus talked about money and stewardship in the Bible, in the gospel? How many times did he talk about it? And I said, well, I don't know, a couple of times. I mean, there's other things to think about, right? And they said, no, Jesus talked about 30% of his gospel is on money. And then they said, how many times does your pastor talk about stewardship? And then I got thinking, we kind of do stewardship and giving in the fall, it's 3 months, so maybe twice. And they said, if a pastor talked about money and finances and stewardship as often as Christ did when he was walking on earth, you would hear 17 sermons a year on stewardship, finance, and all that. James, doesn't happen, does it? Doesn't happen.
They heard it.
Yeah. 17 times is a lot. That's more than once a month. And it's far cry from what most of us do. I'm not here to say you need to do 17 or you need to encourage your pastors to do 17. I'm just using that as an example is you can't do it enough, right? And doing it just at one period of time to say, okay, we asked and move on and do something else isn't the most effective way to do it. Encouraging giving year-round, encouraging giving when you have an activity. The other thing there's 1.5 million charitable organizations. I showed you on that earlier slide, right? Only 300,000 of those are churches. The other 1.2 million are extremely jealous of us because we get our donors in front of us every 7 days, right? Okay, we get an opportunity every 7 days to talk to our people, our donors, our contributors. Those other organizations don't. They've got to come up with ways to do that. They got to send letters, phone calls. They got to create events. We have a built-in event once a week where we get to talk to our people about stewardship, spirituality, time, talent, treasure, all that. It should be done year-round. It should be done more frequently. It should be attached to those activities. If we're having an event at the church where people from the community are coming in and feeling the grace of the community and the good that you're doing, whether it's feeding them, clothing them, Bible study, there should be an opportunity for people to give at that as well. That's when they're moved. That's when they feel the impact. Having those opportunities, doing all of that is an important part of that and creating those opportunities. Again, we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we talk about the e-giving and that kind of stuff. But providing giving opportunities beyond the offering plate, it's good to pass the plate. It's part of our worship service. It should be a way to be grateful to God for all that He's given. But we probably, and you all probably don't, as individuals, make that decision only on Sunday morning, right? We're making those decisions where we're going to use our money, where we're going to give Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, Saturday morning at 10 a.m. We've got to have ways that people can get connected, whether it's through online giving, whether it's transfer stocks, those kinds of things. All the different ways that can be done at different opportunities have to be available, and we'll talk about some of those. Information rich, this is the last one, and to me this is the most important one, is how do we develop a communication plan that lets members know that their gift makes a difference, okay? This is a slide that we use a lot that talks about the top 3 things that impact a donor's decision to support your organization. And if you'll notice at the top, making an impact is number 1. If that's what moves an individual to make a decision to give to your organization, then having that communication plan that lets them know how those dollars impacted lives is key. That's what's going to make the difference. You said evangelism earlier. We use the word testimonials. Testimonials are where you get it. You all know what a testimonial is? Yeah. So, yeah, using a testimonial, sharing your story, being willing to say, this is why I support the church or the program or the thing, is an important way to be an example to others, is to show them and to make that connection between the lives you're impacting and the dollars that are going to do that. That's the key in all of this. We've got to make that connection for the donor. We've got to show them that we've made an impact. How many of you keep track of how many people go to worship on Sunday? You keep track of how many people go to worship? How many of you keep track of how many people go to Sunday school? Do you have Sunday school or Bible study afterwards? Do you have a Bible study? How many people go to Bible study? Keep track of that. How many people come into the church on a weekly basis? Do you keep track of that? Excellent. How many of you use those numbers to tell a story? To say, look, this is all these people came in and used this building. That's why we have to have the building open. It's not just to keep the lights on and keep it heated and all that. If we're not here, these people don't have a place to do this. They're not coming to Christ. They're not feeling that impact in their lives. It would matter if we weren't here. And if we could have more programs, how many more people could we impact? If 100 people came to Bible study and we bought coffee and cookies and had the lights on, what if we bought more cookies and more coffee and kept the lights on longer and had another Bible study at a time that was more convenient for others? Could we impact another 100 lives? Could we impact one life? You have to tell that story. We have to be able to share and show that we are making a difference in people's lives. That's what's going to motivate people to give to the church and to continue to give. Now, how do we do that? The Presbyterian Foundation, like I said, was established back in 1799 to raise, steward, and distribute funds for mission. Our core mission, our core reason for being in existence is to help you do all of that. When we say raise, steward, and distribute funds for mission, you're that mission. Your church is that mission. We don't do it for ourselves. We do it to help you. All the services I'm going to show you are here for you to take advantage of. Utilize Rob or myself or my other colleagues that I'll show you in a minute to help you come up with those communication plans. How do you utilize these tools? How do you talk about this stuff? It's all there for you to access and to use. So we've created tools, we've created resources, we've created educational opportunities to help do all those things we just talked about. The first step in doing that is something called a financial health assessment. I hope this is relevant. If not, I'll move on real quick. But what we realized was there's a lot of things to do. Annual stewardship, planned giving, how do you handle debt? How do you handle capital campaigns, all that? Where do I start? Sometimes we need to have a starting point. Prioritize our time. We have limited amount of time with our members that they can volunteer to do this stuff. How do we prioritize? We created a health assessment that helps you prioritize where do I start. Do I need work on stewardship? Should I be doing planned giving? Should I that kind of stuff? We use data from OGA, the Office of General Assembly. I believe you all as well submit financial data to them every year, correct? Supposed to. If you do, and we have that data, we can generate a report that tells you how you're doing in certain areas. Whether it's, I think the next slide has it. Yes. So whether you're doing well in capital campaigns, participation in worship services, communications planning, it tells you how you're doing based on those figures and some other questions we ask. And then it gives you, like, a red light means you need some help on that. A yellow light means you're doing okay. A green light means you're doing great. And then Rob and myself and our colleagues use this to have a conversation with you on where should I be spending time. So in this particular church, they should be talking about bequest and plan giving. They're short there. They're doing really good in endowments. They're doing really good in leadership. They need to do plan giving. So we would go and help them create a plan giving.
这是每年咱教会拢爱，丢了教会啊，拢爱写一个 report 给迄个中会，还是中会中会就会送去 General Assembly。啊，你若有写，会统计。你若有用迄个时阵，你就有法度 General 这，你若无，你就无法度。所以，迄就是讲，咱会讲，就是讲。你若无用你的中会，你万一无用你的总会，你做侪 you're missing out， 做侪好的物件。Sorry. Yeah, Rob.
Yeah, just to add to Stephen's comments, you get the results immediately.
Yes.
So you'll get it within minutes. So if you want to do it right now, if you have those numbers, you can work on those financial health assessments, and you can do it if you have many people from the church here, you can begin those conversations.
So it's nice, it's easy to find. If you go to the foundation's website and look for financial health assessment, you can find it very easily. And you can fill it out very easily. Anybody can fill it out for their church multiple times. Just give it a try. It's what we are using as a starting point for a conversation. It also then attaches resources that you can use in those areas, okay? So like in this one said bequest and plan giving. It would have a section on that and what they should do, and then it would connect to our plan giving section in our toolbox. We have a toolbox with resources, articles, worksheets for doing wills, financial planning, those kinds of things. And they're all in here that you can then utilize to create a plan giving program, because that's where your deficiency was in the report, and to help you do that, okay?
Could you give me the address, the website address for
PresbyterianFoundation.org.
Yes, PresbyterianFoundation.org. Very simple, okay? So we have a whole plethora, a whole list, a whole lot of tools and resources in all these areas that we can utilize in your churches to start talking about some of those things that we already talked about. How do we implement some of those things? It's all here for you to take advantage of and for you to do. And it's all free of charge. There's no charge. This is what we do back to the denomination. This is our gift back to the denomination. This is our mission. We give this back to do the education.
I'm going to do a plug here.
Great.
For per capita.
Oh, there you go.
咱若是长老会，咱每年拢爱送一寡钱给中会，对无？为虾米咱是讲迄是税，对无？为虾米这拢是 free 的？都是咱迄个关键 per capita， 就是因为有迄才有这。啊，咱若无用这，咱就是头头有人讲你白白你，美惠讲白白互人钱安尼尔。但是啊吼。 你若有用迄，你若有用迄，啊，有足侪物件咱拢爱去用的，啊，所以迄 per capita 是对咱长老教会是最重要，就是
这是赚人头嘛？
赚人头，所以咱钱头都足少的，所以迄啊吼，迄一个人可能30块、40块安尼，所以啊吼，你送去啊，中会有一寡 program， 啊，总会有即种 program，
So again, so these are all like print resources and things that you can print and utilize and access very easily. We also realize that sometimes you need or would like to talk to someone to kind of understand all of this and the resources that come up. So we have a ministry relations program that Rob and I and my colleagues are a part of. When you get your report, it will come up and it will tell you which one of these wonderful 9 people you can go to help. So if you notice, Rob Hagan is here in blue. Rob has all of this. So anybody that's in one of these states in the Northwest, is there anybody from Oregon here? Washington.
Yeah,
So from Washington. Ah, Washington. So Rob would be your human resource for this. Rob is your ministry relations officer. Is there anybody in these green, in Michigan and Ohio?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm yours. This is me. I'm green. I cover Michigan and Ohio as well as doing the national events. So if at any time you wanted to talk about how do we do some of these things, how do we utilize those resources, I would be that contact. Again, at our website, you can easily find these. You don't even have to remember this. You can go on our website and you can type in your area code. No, zip code. Zip code. Type in your zip code and it'll pop up the person you need to call. So you don't even have to remember this. You can just go to the website, hit the locator, type in your zip code, and boom, our face will show up with our contact information, and you can call us, or you can engage, or we can come meet with you, however you want to do it. We will do that. That's what we're here for. That's what we do, and those are the 9 people that do that. Okay, that's resources. How many of you have or utilize online giving in your churches or online giving in any other program?
Want to.
How many of you want to? Okay, how many of you should? All right, y'all should raise your hand on that one. Going back to that slide with the different generations and the millennials and the options and 24/7, 365 days a week. If you don't have an option for online giving, you are really missing an opportunity for individuals to support your programs. We realized this about 4 years ago. We created a way for churches to have online giving. It's a Give Now button that you can put on a website. People can use their phone to make a gift. You can do a recurring gift, which means that they can set it up and every week they can take $100 out of whatever they want it, and it'll come right to the church's account. We have it set up so it doesn't cost the church anything to provide it. If someone utilizes it, there is, of course, a fee because there's some things that have to happen in that cost. So we do, when the transaction happens, have some fees. But to just have it doesn't cost anything. Just having that option is important. If you go back to, on the slide with the faces, where was that? Well, anyway, the slide with the faces, one of our colleagues, Robert Hay, who is a millennial, a younger guy compared to Rob and I, right here. Robert is in the southeast. Robert has shared with us that his friends, so Robert's about 35, so 35 and younger, they make decisions about what church to go to, even to what church to go to, by looking at the website. If they don't have online giving, if they don't have the technology, they don't go to the church. So they're making decisions even to show up based on what you have and what you're doing. So if your goal is to attract younger people to your congregation and doing all that, having those bells, whistles, those technologies is important to them. Whether they make a gift that way or not isn't relevant. For them, the relevancy is, do you do it? Do you offer it? Are you in the 20th century type of thing? They're making those decisions. We understand that, so that's why we have provided it free. You can at least put it on your website for free. That way, if nobody uses it, it doesn't cost you anything, but at least it's showing folks that you have those capabilities. It's extremely important. I would encourage you to look at that, whether you use ours or whether you use someone else's. We'd like to use ours, obviously. But it is important. It's good to have. It's easy to do. And it's something that folks are becoming very, very used to doing, is all of that electronic banking and giving and bill paying and all of that. And the church needs to be there with that.
Off the top of your head, what's the percentage on that?
So the fee? So it just depends. We have 2 ways of doing it. We can do automatically out of your bank account. That's a 1% fee.
Okay.
If you do it with a credit card, it's going to be about a 3.5%. Okay. Pretty reasonable.
Bank to bank is 1%.
Bank to foundation is 1%. Credit card to foundation is about 3.5%.
Gotcha.
Roughly. Okay. Again, you can find that on the website, or you can talk to your ministry relations officer to get you set up. Again, it only takes 2 days to get it set up. You fill up an application, you get it set up. We have 3 people in our home office who are dedicated to doing that, and they can get you set up real easy and real quick.
I'm sorry， 有講一個最重要，無一定愛用，就是講無你有，但是無一定愛用，但是少年人看你有，就會開來。你聽有無？你有法度，你有 provide， 少年人看到講，這個有比較先進，就開來。但是你有無一定會用，無就迄就是 free 啊，所以講以後講bank to bank to foundation 1%， credit card 信用卡到 foundation 是3.5，所以即馬我 checkbook 我都唔知我看幾多我都冇用 checkbook， 足少的，敢用 checkbook 敢阮教會愛奉獻的時候，我在用 checkbook， 我貼出來。
現在我們教會奉獻可以
對 online， 即馬少年人足濟攏手機安尼弄一個，Apple Pay， 錢就付，這是。
对啦，伊就是讲，你若是教会有设即个迄款较少年的，伊才会想讲，你即个教会算21世纪的教会，若无你就是付，迄落伊就无想要参与啦。
不就是 online？
我啊，後面嘛需要，那嘛有時我老貴。
So was that passing the plate?
Yeah.
So I picked up on that. So if we're passing the plate, obviously this kind of replaces that. Where we find is a lot of churches and pastors are a little reluctant about that because passing the plate and putting something in the plate is a very important part of worship, and we understand that. We have about 500 churches who have done this, and a lot of them utilize cards that allow people to say, I gave online, or I did something, so they can put it in the plate when it passes, so they're still participating in that grateful act in worship. So there are ways to do that. We have those. We have resources to help you do that. So we're not removing it from worship. We're just providing those other ways to do that. Does that help? Is that kind of understood that? So, and then the last thing I'll say on it is, you don't have to have a website to take advantage of it, because we provide a platform for you to do that. We have it's called the Mission Exchange, and when you create an online fund, you get a fund on the page, so anybody could find what you're doing, and it's a good way to communicate to other people who aren't as a member. So if someone's out searching for things that they like to support and your church is doing something, it could pop up and they could see what you're doing and they can make a gift. So you get a page, and then if you do have a website, you can also get a Give Now button on your website, so all they have to do is hit that. It pulls up a page for them to make a donation. Very easy, very seamless. So most of us don't like jumping around on the computer. We like it to feel like it's all right there. This does that. And the Give Now button helps do that. So whether you have a web page or not, it still works. We can still make it function for you, and it still is effective. And I would encourage you to, like I said, make sure you're thinking about it, hopefully through us. If not, some type of online giving is imperative these days, given the environment and what folks are used to. And while it tends to be a millennial approach for the younger set, there are a lot of older folks that are using it as well, because again, with a reoccurring function, I can set it up and leave it, and I don't have to worry about it, and I'm always making that gift on a regular basis, even if I don't show up for Sunday worship for whatever reason. The gift is still happening, and that's important in today's environment, okay? The last thing I want to talk about is kind of where we started, and this is where James kind of asked about planned giving. How many of us know that Will's Emphasis Sunday is the first Sunday in May? I'm not even going to raise my hand because I don't even usually remember that. The denomination has identified the first Sunday in May as kind of Will's Emphasis. It's a good opportunity to talk about leaving the church in your estate plan, whether it's through a will or some other format. We have resources and bulletin inserts, sermon notes, bulletin covers, posters, things you can utilize to promote leaving a gift through your will to the church. You can do it on May 1st or whatever the first Sunday in May is, You can do it any other Sunday. It doesn't matter. But we have resources. This is the number one aspect of charitable giving to the church that has impacted those figures I showed you earlier. Remember the first couple of slides? Church is only getting 33% of the charitable pie when it used to get 55% or 51%.
54, huh?
I saw
51.
51. I saw 51. Yeah.
Regardless, we're getting a smaller. The one reason we're getting a smaller portion of the gifts is because we have not kept up on educating our members about the importance of planned giving and the impact it can have on the church and its life in the future. This is an area that almost every church is behind. So we talked about a will earlier, and we all heard that a will is a way to leave directions on what to do with our belongings and assets. 64% of Presbyterians actually have a will. So that means 64 in 100 people actually have left directions for somebody to take care of their stuff. Of those 64%, of those 64 people, only 8% have included a gift to the church in their plans. If I do my math correctly, that's about 3 people, maybe 4, right? Somewhere between 3 and 4? Or between 4 and 5? 4 and 5. Okay? So 4, maybe 5 people out of 100 have left the church in their will. Getting back to our original conversation about, holding up the money and going under and giving everything to God except our money, that kind of explains it. And that kind of shows that we are not keeping up with our message that we should be grateful to God. We should be thinking about everything that He's given to us has come from Him. It's not ours. And if we're going to be good stewards, we need to figure out a way to give some of that, if not all of that, back to Him at some point in time. And that's really what we're talking about with wills. This is at the core of what the foundation does. This is what we are charged to do, is to help you all communicate with individual Presbyterians that out of our gratitude, out of our generosity, this needs to occur. It needs to occur because that's what's going to sustain the church. That's what's going to make it. It needs to occur because as good stewards, that's what we do. Everything we've been given on this earth comes from Him. Everything should be returned in some shape or form. And we need to have those messages. We need to talk about that. Again, hopefully those statistics, 4 to 5 people out of 100, really reinforces that we have not done that. We have not done that. And the one thing in traditional fundraising, which is where I come from, my background, is the number one reason why people don't give. I showed you why they give and they like to impact others. The number one reason they don't give is because they haven't been asked. So if we're not talking about it, if we're not asking them to leave the church in the will, they're certainly not going to do it on their own. So we need to do that. We need to provide those educational opportunities. We need to communicate. We need to make sure that we are expressing that concern and showing them that that's how we express our discipleship, our stewardship back to Christ. Rob, you were going to ask.
Yes. Who do you think should do the asking in the church in regards to congregational members?
Who should do the specific asking? Again, I think it just depends on your particular church, your particular situation. Again, if we're going to be donor-driven and relationship-based, people have different relationships with different people in our congregation. Understanding that and knowing that is probably part of that. Having a conversation with your ministry relations officer to figure that out is the first step in that. But to Rob's point, I think where he's driving me, it's not necessarily always the pastor. It could be, it may be, but it doesn't always have to be. Sometimes peer-to-peer asking is better. Sometimes someone who has done it and can lead as an example through a testimonial is the right way to do that. Whoever that influential person in that life is, probably the important part. Sometimes having someone who's been impacted share their story is a good way to motivate someone to give. If I can feel that someone's given and they're grateful for that, that's probably going to motivate me to give. Again, I think that gets back to the relationship, donor-driven piece of it. Trying to figure that out, trying to understand who the best person is to go and talk about it. Do 2 people need to go? Do, those kinds of things, I think are part of that process, and building a program to handle that and to have that conversation. I have reached the end of my allotted time. I so thank you so much. I'm going to leave you, if it'll go, with one thought from Robert Louis Stevenson that says, don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but the seeds that you plant. If nothing else, remember that this is about a long-term approach, changing the culture. This is about doing little things today that will reap the big benefits down the road. This isn't going to change things overnight. There's not a quick fix. There's not an easy way to do this. This is a commitment to make sure that we are being full disciples, good stewards, and generous Presbyterians to the missions that mean something to our church and to us as individuals. And I think that's a good thing.
Can I ask if there's some question?
Yeah, sure, certainly.
I just want to say thank you. I think basically what I can understand that the key is a communication, and we respect our congregational needs and their good intention. So basically, that's how we work on this. And in essence, for the people in the church, I think very often our concept about the money, but I suppose if we mention the resources, probably even better. Because in a sense, sometimes we just don't want to talk about money. And in fact, money just convertible any kind of resources.
Great. Well, thank you. Yeah, and I'm glad you got that. Yes, because having the conversations is the first step. Being willing to talk about it is the first step in the process.
Over there. Okay.你不要存，互你去处理。到位袂袂咧，就较放伫迄个引导面内底。所以这对咱台湾人来讲，其实我伫美国遮中大学，所以我拢袂见笑，我拢去讲，因为即种美国人对美国来讲，这种 common sense， 而且都是 common conversation， 就是讲平常拢咧讲的，但是咱台湾人的传统就拢莫讲即个遗嘱啦，莫讲啥物钱啊，这拢莫讲，这拢莫讲伫外口。其实啦吼，即摆的少年人拢迄拢无紧啦，迄拢是文化问题啊，所以啦吼，咱的想法较开咧，吼，我昨昏讲就是讲，咱伫即个移民的即种心态内底啊，吼，有时阵会讲就爱较保护咧，吼，阮咧，其实啦吼，咱的囝，咱的查某囝若是遮中大，到免会对我讲。但对要无事讲，就无你讲济，无你想济。
是用，互朋友知影讲咱的预算偌济，毋过迄无个人线啦。教会每年可能爱30万，伊知影尔，迄届无个人线，所以呢 pledge 是个人线的迄种。我就足想要迄个请林长老来讲，人阮恁安怎做？迄个 pledge 甲实际摕着中间会差偌济？确实有安尼有发生过啥物问题？会当请林长老来分享者。
实际上，阮是有送 pledge， 大概有差不多，即摆差不多有10户有 pledge， 毋是讲全部拢有 pledge， 是讲伊上少是一个真好的开始，是讲即10户实际上已经占到50%的比例。
当时做，恁拢12月还是？
无啦，无可能。
阮拢12月无可能做。因为你落爱搁较早一点嘛，落爱做，较早一点落爱做。因为阮是10月有做，阮是10月有互会有算的会议出去以后，落人的 pledge。实际上，阮即摆免送到已经有人的 pledge， 所以讲阮是已经比较主动啦。
那 pledge for what? Pledge for what? Pledge for what?
奉献啊！
奉献。
教会奉
献。就是你。阮教会无指定奉献，阮教会吼是指定奉献全部放伫感恩奉献，因为阮感觉讲，变讲有的团契有真侪钱，有的团契无钱，所以阮对教会对成立第一天，1989年第一天，阮都无做，阮都无放指定。阮所有的奉献，就是讲你若有要指定奉献，家己放喺感恩奉献，所以全部做教堂的平常。所以阮的做法是讲有较简单，就是讲 变讲袂讲有诶团体遮侪钱诶，就是讲逐个团体拢有照因诶计划，啊，要做啥物，就是。
但你刚你11奉献，那不是11奉献之一吗？就是那。
回来记就看伊诶能力咧，回来记。
回来记就是讲你今年10月9月，讲我明年总嘿对。
你可以
我未来是阮教会做过一届，一个人吼，pledge，甲一个人 pledge。其实啦，这 pledge 这是伫咱教会，咱美国人教会每年拢咧做的。啊，咱台湾人拢无这个习惯，我是嘛感觉足奇怪的。啊，但是无要紧啦吼，就是讲一步一步来，吼，一步一步来，一个人嘛好，可能一个人嘛好，人可能是牧师，我毋知。但是啊吼，咱一个数目，唔干安尼啦，唔干安尼。你有 pledge 就是讲你会教会，你 pledge 啊吼，嘛是讲是互教会的即个中级教会遮个 leader 讲，我会伫遮，迄是心灵哦，迄心灵上的一个鼓励哦，讲遮个人 pledge 就是讲遮个人拢会参与。伊拢会参与，毋是 member 嘛会参与，所以毋干那是钱的问题，这嘛是一个 encouragement 鼓励勉励的问题。你 pledge 愈侪人 pledge， 毋是讲愈 pledge 愈侪人 pledge 讲遮个人拢会参与教会的代志，关心教会的代志。迄种的即种的鼓励啊吼，勉励啊吼，对中级对遮个领导者来讲啊吼，对牧师特别对牧师来讲啊吼，是足大的勉励，足大的鼓励。所以毋是干钱尔。
对啊，我因的奉献茶啊啦，吼。所以咱台湾虽然无创 pledge， 但是有的教会吼，第一个月若看伊月限偌济吼，因就用迄个落去估算讲今年某米人伊大概伊的 pledge 偌济是用安尼，咱就是讲无迄个形式用 pledge， 但是因若是有月限贷的时阵吼，然后第一个月限了，大家教会会记就差有一个概念啦。